Her daughter-in-law handed her a clearance candle. For when you're lonely, she smiled. Ellie Whitaker, who co-signed their mortgage and paid for the wedding catering, said nothing. By Monday, her name was off the loan, off the will, and back on the deed. She had raised their son, babysat their kids, even slipped cash under their toaster. But when the audit letter landed and the interest rate spiked, they learned what happens when the matriarch stops being polite. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The suburban street was quiet as Ellie climbed the uneven steps to her son's front porch. Paper-thin grocery store cake box balanced in one hand, the other holding a wrapped gift for her grandson. She paused before ringing the bell, smoothing down the sleeve of her cardigan, then pressed it. Laughter filtered through the door before it opened. Lydia answered, all curated poise and low-key judgment in a beige sweater dress. "Oh, hi, Ellie," she said, barely stepping aside. No hug, no smile that reached her eyes. Inside, the house smelled of rotisserie chicken and lemon floor cleaner. Cheap plastic streamers drooped above the kitchen island. Miles looked up from his phone. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, walking over with a wine glass half full of whatever Lydia drank lately, something pale and sour. "Thank you, sweetheart," Ellie said, her voice warm but quiet. The cake made its way to the counter. "I picked it up on my lunch break," Lydia said, pointing to it like it was part of the decor. "Chocolate fudge. I figured store-bought's easier for everyone." "Of course," Ellie said. She hadn't expected homemade. She hadn't expected much. Dinner was microwaved mac and cheese for the grandkids, limp salad from a bag, and that rotisserie chicken that tasted mostly of salt. Ellie ate with practiced gratitude, asking the kids about school while Lydia scrolled under the table and Miles looked bored. Conversation stayed shallow: weather, gas prices, some neighbor's new fence. No one asked about her job. No one mentioned her birthday again. After the kids were excused, Miles reached beneath the table and pulled out a crumpled tissue paper bag. "Hey," he said, handing it over. "We got you something." Ellie smiled, surprised. She unfolded the top. Inside was a single lavender candle, the label reading "Peaceful Hours" in soft script. "For when you're lonely at night," Miles said with a chuckle, sipping his drink. Dana, the younger daughter, Lydia's from her first marriage, snorted. "It's scented peace," she said. "Like a hug, right, Mom?" Lydia laughed and sipped her wine. "Exactly. We thought of you the moment we smelled it." Ellie turned the candle over in her hands like it was a small animal. "It's lovely," she said. The wax was already nicked on one side, probably a clearance item. She set it down gently. "Glad you like it," Miles said, standing. "We were going to do something bigger, but—" He didn't finish, just shrugged and started collecting plates. Lydia barely looked up. Budget's tight with the patio repairs. Later, when everyone had drifted into other rooms or screens, Ellie stood quietly in the kitchen. She slipped $60 in 20s beneath the corner of the toaster, where Lydia would find it later. She didn't write a note. She didn't need to. She let herself out. No one walked her to the door. That night, in her small apartment that smelled faintly of eucalyptus and dust, Ellie sat in her chair with the candle unlit beside her. The label curled slightly at one corner, the wick already bent. Her phone buzzed. "Tilda, you ready?" Ellie looked at the candle again. Then she stood, crossed to the window, and pulled the string on the old lamp beside her reading chair. It flickered, then cast a soft glow across the room. "Ellie, yes, lights on." She watched the street outside, quiet and empty. But her reflection in the glass was sharp and steady. A woman who had once given everything and had slowly, quietly started taking herself back. The next morning, the candle was still sitting where Ellie had left it, on the windowsill beside the lamp, untouched. She didn't light it. Instead, she moved through her apartment with slow purpose, setting the kettle on the stove and opening the small fireproof box she kept in the closet, beneath old tax folders and her late sister's obituary. Inside were papers, yellowing in spots, meticulously stacked. She ran a hand over them like she was checking a patient's pulse. The door buzzed. 3 sharp pulses. Tilda. Ellie unlocked it, and the woman stepped in, brisk and humming with low-voltage energy. leather bag on her shoulder, oversized thermos in hand. "You look steady," Tilda said, setting the thermos down on the table. "I am." Ellie nodded toward the box. "I found them." Tilda sat, flipping open the files without comment. She scanned the top page, brow arching. "They never transferred the deed." Ellie poured the tea, her hand steady. "No. Miles said we'd do it once they settled in. That was 7 years ago." Tilda gave a short exhale, almost a laugh. "You still own 49% of the farmhouse." "I paid the down payment," Ellie said quietly. "They didn't have enough savings back then. They needed help." Tilda looked up from the paperwork. "And you co-signed their current mortgage?" Ellie nodded once. A silence passed, dense with unspoken math. Tilda reached into her bag, pulled out her laptop, and began typing. "Let's confirm lien status, equity, title status." Ellie interrupted softly. "Don't sugarcoat it, Tilda. I want the truth. How bad can I hurt them without hurting myself?" Tilda gave her a sidelong look. "You want precision. I can do precision." The keyboard clacked softly as she worked. Ellie stood, walking to the window. Outside, golden October light slanted across the sidewalk, catching on the worn metal of the mailbox. Her neighborhood wasn't flashy, but it was hers, paid off, quiet, unbothered. Not like the suburban excess Miles and Lydia flaunted in every staged social post. Speaking of which, "Check this," Tilda muttered, angling the screen toward Ellie. On Lydia's public Facebook page, Dana, barely 17 and always posting like she lived in a Hallmark movie, was twirling in front of the farmhouse porch. The caption read, "Our forever home. Couldn't feel more grateful." "Forever?" Tilda echoed, dry. "Time to remind them what forever costs." Ellie's mouth twitched, but not in amusement. "They think I'm a relic, a polite checkbook, some little figure who shows up on holidays with casseroles and babysitting offers." She looked back at the table. "I gave them comfort. Let's see how they do cold." Tilda closed the laptop with a soft click. "We start by sending a letter of interest. Reminder that you're still a legal stakeholder in the property. Then we explore what options give you leverage. Partition, buyout, even forced sale, if it comes to it." "They'll panic," Ellie said, voice even. "They should." There was no malice in Tilda's tone, just clarity. She'd known Ellie since before the divorce, back when Ellie still wore pastel cardigans, and apologized before asking for the check. Tilda had seen her rebuild with silence and thrift and long drives to job interviews she wouldn't mention. She'd also seen her start to wake up. This wasn't a woman being vengeful. This was a woman reclaiming oxygen. Ellie walked to the candle, picked it up again, turned it once in her hands, then opened the lid and smelled it. Too sweet, too fake. The lavender had no weight to it, like perfume over a rotting rug. She shut the lid. "Let's draft the letter," Ellie said, setting the candle down with finality. "I want it signed and ready by Monday." Tilda opened her bag again. They worked for the next hour. Details, numbers, phrasing that sounded cordial but carried the unmistakable weight of legal consequence. When it was done, Ellie signed the draft with calm fingers. "I want it mailed to the house," she said. "Not emailed. Not certified. Just normal mail. Let it land like a pebble in a glass house." Tilda raised her brows but nodded. "Okay." Ellie walked her to the door. As Tilda stepped into the hall, Ellie stopped her with a question that had been rising quietly all morning. "If they fight it, really fight it, how far can I go?" Tilda studied her for a beat, then gave a slow, measured answer. "You own almost half. There's no ceiling, just nerve." Ellie didn't blink. The door clicked shut behind Tilda. Ellie turned, the quiet pressing in again, familiar but no longer comforting. She looked once more at the candle on the sill. Then she walked over and finally lit it. The wick sputtered once before settling into a small, wavering flame. The kitchen was dark when Ellie answered the phone. It was just past 6 a.m., the sky still blue-black outside the window. The candle from the night before a stub of memory on the sill. She sipped lukewarm coffee and listened as Yvette's voice came through the speaker. "You're going to want to sit down." Ellie already was. "Tell me." "So that county grant they use for the porch, the second bathroom, and the energy retrofits. It's all under your name. Application was filed 2 years ago." Dana filled it out and listed you as the primary occupant. Ellie blinked, slow. She said it was for me. She said a lot of things. Yvette sounded disgusted. The form calls it a multi-generational occupancy request, but according to county records, you're listed as the owner and primary resident. They leveraged your status to qualify. You know what that means, right? I can pull the grant, Ellie said, voice flat. Trigger an audit. Force them into compliance. And they'll owe every dollar back. Yvette paused. Ellie, we're talking 28 grand. Ellie didn't flinch. What do I need to sign? That afternoon, she walked into the county office wearing her pressed gray wool coat and the same shoes she wore to Miles's wedding, back when Lydia had insisted on blush and beige everything, and Ellie had paid for the catering. Yvette met her at the records desk, a folder already waiting. Once we file, there's no retracting. The house will be flagged for misuse of public funds. They'll be required to prove occupancy or return the grant. No loopholes. Ellie thumbed through the documents, then signed. Behind her, a young couple waited in line. Ellie didn't care. She didn't move fast. She didn't smile. That evening, the farmhouse kitchen buzzed with the sounds of dinner. Lydia had set out a cheese board she'd picked up from Trader Joe's. Dana scrolled her phone between bites of cranberry cheddar. Miles stirred pasta on the stove, his voice raised over the TV. I think we should paint the guest room next, something coastal. Dana looked up. It's getting so cute in here, Lydia beamed. It's already beautiful. This house was meant for family. The doorbell rang. Dana skipped over, phone still in hand, and opened it to find the mail carrier walking away. She glanced down, a manila envelope with her name and Lydia's, addressed to current occupants. Inside, a letterhead from the County Development Commission, stamped with the word audit pending. The next morning, Ellie stepped into the vestibule of St. Raymond's Church, a place she hadn't been in since the candlelight vigil for her neighbor's son, years ago. Pastor Clay spotted her from the hallway and came out, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Well now, look who the Lord let in. I'm not staying for service, Ellie said. Just needed a quiet face. Clay smiled, weathered and calm. You always had good instincts. They sat in the side chapel, the stained glass light brushing the edges of Ellie's coat. I filed a compliance audit, she said after a pause. Clay raised his eyebrows but didn't interrupt. They used my name, my credit, my presence. Her voice was measured, but her knuckles were pale against the pew. They spent what they didn't earn and forgot where it came from. Clay nodded slowly. You're not here to ask if it's wrong. You're here because it doesn't feel wrong enough. She gave a thin smile. No, I'm here because I don't feel bad. He leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. Ellie, God forgives. But county records don't. Ellie's smile vanished. I know, she said. She stood, thanked him, and walked out without waiting for a sermon. That night, her phone buzzed. Lydia, is everything okay with the house? Ellie stared at the message. She imagined Lydia standing in that open-concept kitchen, fingers flying across her iPhone, no doubt already Googling how audits worked, how fast they escalated, whether the county had the power to seize assets. Ellie, nothing that wasn't borrowed. She didn't add punctuation, let them read it twice. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the dried ivy that curled around the balcony rail. Ellie stood, crossed the room, and turned off the lamp. The candle's flame flickered again, smaller now, but steady. She whispered to the quiet, let them learn what it's like to owe. And then, for the first time in months, she slept with the window open. The first frost laced Ellie's window by morning, spidering silver across the corners of the glass. She stared at it while her coffee steeped. The candle beside her burned low, and her phone buzzed with a single message from Tilda. I reviewed the mortgage. Ellie didn't bother texting back. She just dressed, buttoned her coat slowly, and walked to the corner cafe where Tilda already sat, laptop open and lips tight. They're going to feel this one, Tilda said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Because you're still on that loan. Joint liability. They never refinanced. Never even tried. Ellie sat. Expression unreadable. If you formally withdraw as co-signer, Tilda continued, turning the screen so Ellie could see the table of terms, the mortgage goes up for immediate reevaluation, New credit pull, new debt-to-income analysis. And with the audit flag already in their records, the bank will redline them. Ellie blinked. And the rate? Will spike. Probably by 3-4 points. Monthly payment jumps by at least 700. Ellie's fingers curled around the ceramic mug. Good. She filed the papers that afternoon at the branch on Adams Street. The banker, a young man with a tired smile, looked briefly confused before Ellie slid the notarized cosigner withdrawal across the desk. You're sure about this? He asked. Absolutely. At the farmhouse, the evening was already tense. Lydia stirred squash soup distractedly while Dana hovered in the doorway, still scrolling her phone. Miles sat at the kitchen table, unopened mail spread out before him. This audit thing is going to blow over, Lydia muttered. Worst case, we just show Mom doesn't live here. That's the truth. Dana didn't look up. Except you put her on the grant. You called her primary occupant in the form, remember? Lydia went pale. The doorbell rang again. This time, no one got up immediately. Dana finally opened the door to find another envelope. This one from the mortgage lender. Inside, notice of cosigner removal and rate reevaluation in process. Dad, she said quietly, handing him the letter. Miles read it once, then again. He looked up at Lydia, then down at the pile of bills. What the hell is this? Dana answered first. It says Nana pulled her name from the mortgage. Lydia reached for it. Wait. It says the interest rate is... Dana's voice cracked. It's going up. A lot. The soup boiled over on the stove. No one moved to fix it. An hour later, Ellie's phone rang. She didn't pick up. Then a second call. Then a third. Finally, her landline. She let the answering machine pick up, and Miles's voice came through, distorted with rage. Mom, what the hell did you do? You're ruining us. The bank said we're going to have to pay over $800 more a month. We can't afford that. Are you trying to destroy your own family? He didn't wait for the beep to end before hanging up. Ellie sat calmly in her chair, legs crossed, candle flickering beside her again. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. 15 minutes later, her cell buzzed again. Dana, can you please call me? I don't know what's happening. Then a follow-up. Dana, I miss you. Please. Ellie stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the phone, but she didn't tap anything. Instead, she whispered to the quiet, I was only ever rescuing you. At the farmhouse, Miles paced the living room, fists clenched at his sides. Lydia sat stiff-backed on the couch, arms folded tightly, breathing through her nose. Dana stood in the hall, phone pressed to her ear, listening to endless rings that never picked up. The last time her grandmother had gone silent like this was after the funeral, after Ellie came home from burying her own mother and found Lydia had thrown out the china hutch for space. Maybe she's just teaching us something, Dana said softly, finally lowering the phone. Miles barked a bitter laugh. She's punishing us. She wants to see us fail. Dana didn't answer. She just stared out the window toward the fence line where Ellie used to plant marigolds each spring. For once, the yard looked hollow. Back at her apartment, Ellie blew out the candle and reached for the tea kettle. Her hands didn't shake. Outside, frost crept higher on the windows. She didn't turn on the heat. She didn't need it. The silence was warm enough. The envelope was pale blue, the kind that used to hold Christmas cards and baby shower invites. Lydia found it wedged between the electric bill and a bank notice, the handwriting instantly recognizable, looping, deliberate, and calm. E.R. Whitaker, the return address read in thin black ink. Miles was outside checking the meter, muttering about late fees and government nonsense, while Dana scrolled her phone at the kitchen island. Lydia turned the envelope over, studying the wax seal Ellie had pressed onto it. Lavender, faintly cracked. For a moment, she thought about waiting. Then she slid a paring knife beneath the flap. The letter wasn't long. Lydia, this isn't goodbye. I'm just reorganizing what was always mine to give. The lake cottage is now yours. So is the Buick. Titles are enclosed. Take care of them the way you wish you'd taken care of what came before. You'll find I've already transferred the deed. Ellie attached beneath the folded stationery were 2 official forms, notarized, county stamped. The cottage deed, the vehicle title, both in Lydia's name. Lydia's breath caught. Oh my God, Dana looked up. What? She held the papers up with trembling hands. She transferred the cottage, and her car. Dana rolled her eyes. You're kidding. That's manipulation from an old woman who knows how to twist guilt. Lydia's voice hardened. You think giving something away is manipulation? She's making you feel sorry for her, Dana said, pushing off the counter. You saw what she did to Dad. She wants control. Lydia slammed the papers down. She gave more than you ever said thank you for. Dana froze. Her mother's tone cut through the kitchen like cold air through broken glass. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lydia gathered the letter and walked down the hall toward the guest room, the one they'd promised Ellie could use any time, but never once invited her back to. She sat on the edge of the neatly made bed, reading the letter again. Her hands shook now, not from anger but something heavier. Regret, maybe, or the quiet recognition that generosity wasn't always a weakness. Sometimes it was the sharpest blade of all. Outside, Miles came in, stamping snow off his boots. What's that? He asked. She left me the cottage, Lydia said softly. He frowned. What cottage? The one by the lake, her place up near Red Arrow Point. Miles blinked. That thing's falling apart, probably worth less than the taxes she still owes. Lydia looked up at him sharply. Then why do I feel like it just cost me something? Miles didn't answer. He never did when she asked questions that weren't about money. Across town, Tilda stood in a narrow office, fax machine humming as she fed through a document. The line beeped twice, then confirmed, notice of interest filed, Whitaker Property Holdings, parcel Thursday 3A&B. She checked the clock, leaned back, and called Ellie. It's done, she said. Filed under your right of interest. They'll be notified within 48 hours. Ellie's voice was quiet but steady. Good. You sure you want the church folks hearing before they do? Because Clay's already asking questions. That's fine, Ellie said. Let the truth move faster than the gossip for once. Tilda chuckled softly. You really are done being quiet, aren't you? Ellie didn't answer, just exhaled. By Sunday, Pastor Clay had spoken to 3 people before breakfast, and 6 more after the service. It started with a single sentence over coffee in the fellowship hall. Did you know, he said mildly, Ellie Whitaker never took a penny from that family she helped buy their house? She paid half and got treated like she paid nothing. It spread faster than scripture. By midweek, the grocery clerk was whispering it to the postal carrier. By Thursday, Lydia heard it from a neighbor who didn't even go to church. The words carried like wildfire on dry grass. She gave them everything, and they gave her distance. Lydia stopped showing up at the club, stopped answering texts from her garden group. Even Dana noticed the way her mother's voice trembled when the phone rang. That night, Lydia found herself sitting in the car, Ellie's Buick, engine off, headlights pooling weakly over the frozen driveway. The leather smelled faintly like lavender and old receipts. She opened the glove box. Inside was another envelope, smaller this time, with a folded photograph. Ellie standing by the lake cottage in summer, hair windblown, hand raised mid-wave. On the back, in the same looping hand, one line, "You always said you wanted a view." Lydia pressed the photo to her chest, eyes closed. While inside the house, Miles and Dana argued again about overdue bills and refinance options. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, she answered. Mrs. Whitaker? It was a county clerk. Ma'am, this is just a courtesy call. We received notice of interest filed on your residence. It looks like a partial ownership claim from an Eleanor R. Whitaker. You'll want to review that before month end. Lydia's throat went dry. She filed what? The clerk repeated it, polite but firm. A title claim, ma'am. It's public record now. When the call ended, Lydia sat motionless in the dark, one hand gripping the letter, the other clutching the wheel. The porch light from the farmhouse glowed through the windshield, warm, steady, and blinding. The voicemail came in at 2:13 a.m. Ellie saw it when she woke, light pooling across her nightstand, the candle now just a hardened stump. She played the message once, then again, this time with the volume down. Dana's voice, frantic and raw. You seriously think this is okay? To do this to us? You knew Gavin was counting on that internship. He worked his ass off. He deserved it. But no, you had to destroy everything just to prove some weird point about who owes who. You're bitter, you're cruel. You're not the woman I used to look up to. You're just some lonely, petty old witch who wants to make sure no one else is happy. Congratulations, you've ruined your family. The message ended in harsh breathing before the abrupt click of the line going dead. Ellie didn't respond. Instead, she forwarded the audio to Tilda with no note. 2 minutes later, Tilda called. Got it, she said, her voice flat. That's the sound of someone who knows they never earned it. Ellie said nothing. She's unraveling because she's finally seeing the difference between being loved and being entitled, Tilda added. Ellie let out a breath through her nose. And Gavin? There was a short pause. Then, internship's gone. Bank flagged the default in their pre-placement audit. Program can't carry the liability. Ellie nodded to herself. She didn't like that part, didn't hate it either. Gavin wasn't cruel, just blind. She'd tried for years to be the one who opened his eyes gently. No one had wanted them open. By noon, Ellie was seated at the conference table in her attorney's office, papers spread before her like the final layout of a chessboard. Her trust officer, an older woman named Marie, looked over the revisions carefully. Are you absolutely sure? Marie asked. This will reroute all future disbursements, tuition, books, even college housing. If you die, Lydia will have full administrative control over what gets paid. I'm sure, Ellie said. Let her carry the weight for once. Let them beg her for what they used to take from me without asking. Marie glanced at her, curious but not probing. The accounts are still funded through your estate. They were always for Gavin, Ellie said simply. I'm not punishing him. I'm reminding them he was never yours to buy pride with. Marie made the adjustments in clean, efficient strokes. When Ellie stood to leave, she buttoned her coat and said, If Lydia fumbles it, the money locks. Marie nodded. And if she doesn't? Ellie's smile was cold and faint. Then she finally gets to be a provider. That evening, Ellie stood at her window, looking out over the brittle lawn and bare branches. She didn't light the candle. Not tonight. Her phone buzzed. Instagram notification. Adana Whittaker posted a new photo. She clicked it. The image was a muted toned selfie in the mirror. Messy bun, smudged mascara, oversized hoodie. Caption. Family means betrayal. But at least betrayal teaches you who to become. 1 like, then 3, then 11. All classmates, friends with matching manicures and mood disorders. None of whom had ever thanked Ellie for birthday cards or college checks, or that semester she paid Gavin's textbook bill when no one else could. Ellie didn't react. She didn't comment. She simply clicked report post. Not for harassment, not for misinformation, just for irrelevance. At the farmhouse, Dana was pacing. She hasn't responded, not once. Lydia sat on the couch with her laptop open, now logged into the trust portal Ellie's attorney had quietly granted her access to. She rerouted the education funds, Lydia said quietly. I'm the only authorized disperser now. Miles looked up from a stack of overdue envelopes. What does that even mean? It means if Gavin needs money for school, he has to come through me. Dana blinked. She made you the gatekeeper? Lydia nodded slowly. I think she always knew what you'd do when the door finally closed. Dana turned away, heart pounding. Outside, wind rattled the porch light. It didn't flicker, it just burned brighter. The paper hit the doorstep at 6:47 a.m. Ellie didn't subscribe anymore, but the delivery boy had started leaving it anyway after the church bake sale, where she'd quietly paid off a widow's power bill and asked for no receipt. The headline was local and simple. The quiet donor behind dozens of recovering families. Below it, a black and white photo. Ellie, from a church picnic 3 years ago, holding a child on her hip, her smile faint but present. The reporter must have pulled it from the parish archive. She hadn't posed. She never did. Ellie read the story standing barefoot in the kitchen, steam rising from her mug. It cataloged quiet donations to school lunch programs, a rebuilt roof for the Collins family after the fire, 5 grocery accounts paid off anonymously at the corner mart, and multiple community grants for returning veterans, all signed quietly, all tied to one name that had never been spoken aloud until now, Eleanor Ruth Whittaker. Midway down the article, a quote stood out. Sometimes, the ones they silence are the ones who sign the checks. She didn't cry. Not even when she saw Pastor Clay's name listed among the sources. He'd only said one thing to the reporter. She never raised her voice, just her standards. At the farmhouse, Dana's scream cracked the morning quiet like a dropped plate. She stood in the kitchen holding the paper in one trembling hand, phone in the other. Look at this. Look at what she's done now. Lydia took the article, her eyes flicking down the columns. Dana kept ranting. She's spinning it like she's this martyred angel. Look at what she left out. The part where she tanked Dad's mortgage. The part where she sabotaged Gavin's internship. This is all PR, Lydia looked up. No, Dana, this is what people say when they finally feel safe enough to tell the truth. Dana stared at her, stunned. No one believes you anymore, Lydia added. Not because you're wrong, but because you never said thank you until the money stopped. Dana's mouth opened, then closed. She left the room without a word. Miles texted Ellie at noon. Miles, we need to talk. You've made your point. Ellie stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back slowly. Ellie, I'm not making a point. I'm pulling the plug. She didn't elaborate. Let him sit in that sentence the way she'd sat through 100 silent dismissals. Every time they changed plans without telling her. Left her off the family group chat. Or used her generosity like an ATM with a smile. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't check it. Instead, she opened her laptop and reread the article once more, watching the share count tick upward. It wasn't about legacy. It was about being seen. Not as a ghost in the guest room or a blank check in the glove box, but as someone who had paid the price of staying silent, and was done doing so. Pastor Clay posted the article to the church bulletin board and again on Facebook with one word, Amen. It was shared 37 times by noon. Women from Ellie's old volunteer circles added comments. About time she got her flowers. Never met someone more selfless. She paid our rent once and never said a word. Even the old librarian downtown commented. Her hands shook when she signed the check. Still did it. Ellie didn't comment. She just read. For once, her story wasn't being filtered through Lydia's Facebook captions or Dana's pity party hashtags. It was hers. Raw, quiet, unpolished, but true. Back at the farmhouse, Miles sat alone on the porch. The newspaper folded tightly in his lap. Lydia didn't come out, neither did Dana. The silence around him wasn't peaceful. It was indictment. He scrolled through his phone, opened old texts he never answered. Birthday reminders, grocery lists, photos of Ellie with Gavin at his science fair, Ellie at the kitchen table helping Dana with a college application essay. Neither of them remembered her staying up to edit. He deleted none of them, but he also didn't call. Inside the house, the heat clicked on too late to feel like comfort. By the following Thursday, the grant fraud was public record. The county's transparency portal posted the audit summary, a 4-page document outlining misuse of public renovation funds under the name Whitaker, D., with highlighted portions referencing falsified occupancy records, false tenant information, and misrepresented elderly primary resident claims. Someone, no one admitted who, printed it out and pinned it to the community board at Henderson's Market. By noon, it had made its way to the high school teacher's lounge, 2 hair salons, and Dana's inbox. By dinner, her Etsy shop had lost 3 affiliate sponsors. Brand alignment issues, one email read. Another didn't bother explaining. Just a clean break and a deactivated link. Dana stood in the middle of the farmhouse kitchen, clutching her laptop like it had betrayed her. This is slander, she hissed. Lydia, arms crossed, said nothing. Miles looked up from the audit printout. It was your application. You used Ellie's address. You listed fake tenants, Dana, for government money. Dana whipped around. You signed off on the receipts. Miles shrugged, defensive. I trusted you to do it right. Oh, of course, Dana snapped, voice rising. Just like you trusted Ellie to co-sign the house, co-sign the tuition, co-sign your entire life. Don't drag me into this, Lydia warned, voice quiet but sharp. I didn't touch the grant application. Dana stared at her. You let me file it under her name and pretend she was still part of this family. And maybe she would have been, Lydia said, if we had treated her like she was. That evening, Ellie sat with Yvette on a park bench downtown, breath fogging between them. The courthouse clock struck 6 behind them. They won't press charges unless the DA pushes for it, Yvette said, scrolling through her tablet. But a civil hearing is possible. I'm not suing, Ellie said. I know. That's why I filed it under notice only. You're not the complainant, but the county might still call you. Ellie was quiet for a beat. Do I have to testify? No, but you can. Ellie didn't answer right away. She just watched the traffic pass by in soft winter light, her gloves folded neatly in her lap. Let the record speak louder than I ever did, she said finally. Let them read every line. Miles slammed the door harder than necessary when he came home that night. Dana was already crying in the living room, red-eyed and furious. I can't undo it, she shouted. The application's everywhere. They're saying I lied to get free money. My whole business is crashing. Miles threw his coat onto the chair. You didn't just lie. You committed federal grant fraud. I was 17. You let me put her name on it. You let me write whatever fit the form. Don't pin this on me. Lydia stepped in from the hallway, arms crossed. No one has to pin anything. It's all already printed. Dana shook her head, voice low now. She wanted this. She waited until now to burn everything down. Lydia looked at her for a long, quiet moment. No. She waited for you to stop handing her the match. Ellie was steeping tea when the call came through. Unknown number, male voice, quiet. Hi, Grandma, she froze. Gavin? Yeah, He paused, and she could hear movement behind him. A door shutting, a long breath. I know things are weird right now, Another pause. I just wanted to ask if I could still see you. Ellie sat down slowly, the spoon clinking against the ceramic rim. You can, she said, her voice steady, but you'll come as yourself, not their messenger. I know, Gavin said. I want to talk, just us. The line held for a long shared silence. Then Ellie said, very gently, okay. She didn't cry, she didn't smile, but for the first time in weeks, she left the candle unlit, not because she'd forgotten it, but because she no longer needed a signal to be seen. It began with a form, a simple stack of notarized pages, filed by Tilda under notice of partition and eviction, partial owner enforcement. The county clerk barely blinked as she stamped it, slid it across the counter, and said, They've got 30 days, but you can schedule the movers sooner. Tilda didn't schedule the movers. Ellie did. The envelope arrived on a Monday. No return address, just Ellie's handwriting across the front in a clean, precise hand. Inside, a single sheet of cream paper. No salutation. You may take your things. The warmth stays here. E.R.W. Miles crumpled the letter before he finished reading it. This is war, he said, pacing the living room. She's actually trying to take the damn house. Dana sat on the floor, phone already in hand. We need to go live. We need people to see this. Don't, Lydia said sharply from the doorway. But Dana had already tapped the button. Her voice came shaky through the live stream. My grandma is evicting us, my family. This is what betrayal looks like. She turned the phone toward the front window just in time to catch the moving truck pulling up. The chat filled quickly. You forged her name for a grant. This is justice, not betrayal. Actions have consequences. Dana watched the hearts and angry faces roll in, but none in her favor. Outside, the movers stepped from the truck and checked the clipboard. One knocked gently on the front door. Miles threw it open. You tell that witch this isn't over, he shouted, loud enough for the street to hear. This was our house. But even as he yelled, the rust-colored sign posted at the edge of the porch waved gently in the breeze. Private property, co-owner access revoked by order of county court. One mover glanced toward it and said quietly, Sir, we're here to supervise the removal of personal belongings. You'll need to vacate today. Ellie didn't watch it happen. She was in her apartment kitchen, sliding a tray of scones into the oven when Lydia arrived, bag in hand, face pale. They're gone, Lydia said, her voice a whisper. Ellie nodded, pouring tea into 2 chipped mugs. I know. They said you can move in now, or sell. I don't want it, Ellie said. I just didn't want them thinking it was theirs. They sat at the table, steam rising between them, no music playing. Only the sound of the oven ticking and the wind tapping the window. Lydia looked down at the linen napkin folded beneath her plate. "Can I stay the week?" Ellie's answer came without pause. "Yes." They didn't speak much that afternoon. They baked, they folded laundry. Lydia cried once, quietly, while wiping a counter. Ellie didn't reach for her, but she didn't walk away either. That night, they sat side by side on the couch, each with a scone in hand and the candle, the lavender one, burning low between them. Lydia glanced at it. Why keep it? Ellie didn't look at her. So I wouldn't forget what they thought I was worth. Lydia blinked back tears. "I'm sorry." Ellie didn't answer right away. Then, "They gave me a candle. I gave them darkness." At the farmhouse, the movers had finished by nightfall. The house sat hollow now, lights off, heat disconnected. A broken wind chime knocked once against the eaves. Dana sat curled in the back of Lydia's Buick, scrolling through her phone. Her stream had gone viral, but not in the way she hoped. Gavin had left a single comment beneath it. She deserved better. Miles sat on the front steps, face in his hands, mumbling to no one. "You were the one who said she didn't need the deed." "She said we'd share it," Dana whispered. "She said family meant something." But in the house behind them, the warmth was gone. What remained was cold drywall and the sound of a wind they could no longer shut out. The paperwork was filed quietly on a Tuesday morning. Ellie wore a charcoal gray sweater and soft-soled shoes. No makeup, no ceremony. She handed the title over in a manila folder. Her name printed cleanly on the last page in looping blue ink, Eleanor Sloane Whitaker. Her maiden name reinstated. Her name, not the one they attached to debt and disappointment. "This is everything?" the director asked, double-checking the folder. "It's the deed. The key's in the envelope," Ellie said. "It's yours now, all of it." Outside, the farmhouse sat framed against a pale winter sky. The shutters had been repainted, the porch swept, the chimney fixed. By the weekend, it would no longer be called a family home. It would be something better. A new sign had been ordered, brass, hand-cast in the next town over. Donated by Eleanor Sloane. "Warmth lives here." It would be mounted beside the front steps, just beneath the porch light. The one Dana had once dimmed to save electricity, the one Ellie had paid to rewire. Inside, they were installing bunk beds and a small nursery. There would be 3 families moving in by the end of the month, all single mothers, all displaced, all tired of asking nicely. Ellie understood. That evening, Dana sat in the back of her friend's car, scrolling through legal threads on Reddit. "They said I could file for emotional distress," she muttered, pulling at her sleeve. All this trauma, she triggered it. Her friend didn't respond. She'd stopped nodding an hour ago. Dana's phone buzzed with a notification from the county court system. Her civil claim had been reviewed. Denied. Lack of standing. She stared at the screen, numb. In the comments under the latest live stream, someone had written, "You lied on a federal form. She gave away a house." Another added, "You don't know the difference between pain and consequence." She threw the phone onto the seat and stared out the window. Miles was seen once, 3 towns over, sitting alone in a diner with a cracked flip phone and a glass of water. The waitress said he tipped in cash and never looked up from his plate. By week's end, his truck had been sold. No forwarding address, just silence. No one missed him, not loudly. On Saturday, Lydia stood in the middle of the old farmhouse kitchen, now the transitional home's dining area, holding a paint roller in one hand and a plastic tarp in the other. "I'll do the trim," she said quietly. Tilda handed her a can of primer. "It peels near the back window." "I know," Lydia said. "I used to ignore it." Together, they worked in silence. Ellie was outside talking to the program's director. 3 new residents were due in Monday morning. There would be toys on the living room floor soon. Art taped to the fridge. Women cooking for their children where Lydia had once scorched soup and scrolled Instagram. Lydia stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow with the sleeve of a shirt she hadn't worn since Ellie's birthday dinner. The one with the candle. She didn't ask if Ellie would ever forgive her. Not anymore. That wasn't the point. Instead, she painted until her shoulders ached. Not to erase what had been done, but to ready the space for something that might still grow. That night, Ellie sat on her apartment balcony, wrapped in a thick shawl, the candle, burned to its final inch, flickering beside her on a small iron table. She didn't need it anymore. She let it burn, not as a message, but as an ending. Across her lap was a thin manila folder, a copy of the shelter's transfer confirmation, and a small framed photo. It was the farmhouse, but now the porch was filled with women laughing. A toddler reached toward the camera. The porch light glowed. Tilda had taken the photo that morning. "It's already warmer," she said when she handed it over. Ellie smiled, the corner of her mouth twitching slightly. "Good." She stared at the flame a long while. Then she reached for a match and struck it, lighting the last of the lavender wax until it caught. When it went out, and it would, she wouldn't replace it. There was nothing left to signal. The key turned softly in the front door lock just after 8 a.m. The first family stepped inside the old farmhouse, now Shelter House Tarker 3 on the county's transitional housing list. As the frost on the windows began to melt, a woman in her 30s, her face drawn but alert, guided 2 children inside. A girl about 7 clutched a stuffed penguin, her little brother holding a Ziploc bag of crayons. The smell of fresh paint still lingered in the halls, mixed now with the light citrus of lemon oil and something warm rising from the kitchen vent. "Your room is the one at the top of the stairs," the program director said gently. "There's a note from Miss Eleanor on the bed." The mother looked up. "Will we meet her?" "She prefers quiet visits," the director replied, but smiled. "You'll know when she's been here." Ellie stood by the side gate, holding a canvas tote bag in one hand and a basket in the other. Inside, fresh towels folded into thirds, a stack of picture books wrapped with twine, and a tin of lemon poppy muffins still warm from the oven. She didn't wear a name tag or knock. She placed the bag on the front steps and tucked the tin beneath it. Then she stood for a breath, as if listening for something. A cry, a laugh, a door closing gently upstairs. Nothing came, which meant everything was okay. She turned to leave, brushing the frost off the railing as she went. The porch light clicked on behind her as if saying thank you. Across the street, Dana sat in the passenger seat of an old classmate's car, engine idling. "She's here," she whispered. "She still comes here." Her friend looked up from her phone. "You want to say something?" Dana didn't answer. She got out, closing the car door too softly, like the sound might undo the silence. Ellie caught sight of her mid-step. They stood across the sidewalk from one another, no more than 20 feet. Dana opened her mouth, then shut it. Ellie tilted her head. "You've had a lot to say to strangers," she said, calm. "Say it now, if it's worth saying to me." Dana's jaw tightened. She shook her head once. "You gave them the house." "No," Ellie said. "I gave it purpose." Dana's voice trembled. "We were family." Ellie didn't blink. Family wasn't in the deed. For a long moment, Dana said nothing. Her cheeks flushed, fists tight at her sides. Then she nodded once, not in agreement, but defeat, and walked back toward the car. She didn't turn around, and Ellie didn't watch her go. By spring, the shelter had become a fixture in the community, a success story no one had expected but everyone quietly admired. The porch bloomed with marigolds and sunflowers, the bedrooms painted in calming greens and light blues. Donations arrived weekly. Volunteers came from churches and book clubs and PTA circles that had once ignored the signs of need just blocks from their own homes. People stopped calling it a project. They called it Ellie's house. And Ellie stayed quiet. She delivered groceries. She washed curtains. She slipped $20 bills into jacket pockets of women who never asked, who pretended not to notice until the bus stop. She never entered the rooms. They weren't hers anymore. They never were, not really. But she tended the warmth like a gardener tends soil, not for ownership, but for growth. The open house arrived on a Sunday in late March. Flyers had gone out. The mayor sent flowers. Pastor Clay came early with folding chairs. Ellie declined to speak. Instead, she stood near the side gate again, away from the ribbon and the cameras and the handshakes. Lydia, wearing a cream blouse and scuffed sneakers, took the small stage by the garden bed. She glanced down at her note cards, then let them fall to her side. "I used to live here," she began, "but I never made it a home." A few murmurs moved through the crowd. She waited. "I didn't understand warmth until I saw it used to make space for people instead of control." Ellie gave that to this place, not because she had to, but because she was the only one who ever understood what it meant to be cold and alone, and still offer someone else a blanket. She looked out at the women on the porch, the toddlers on their laps. She gave us this house, but she gave them the rooms we never earned. Ellie, standing just far enough to hear, closed her eyes for a beat. She didn't cry, she just smiled, soft and thin and private, because this time, the words had come from the one person who finally stopped expecting credit and started speaking truth. The award ceremony was held in the refurbished town hall, the kind of place that once smelled of varnish and sweat, but now carried the faint scent of eucalyptus and new carpet. Rows of folding chairs faced a makeshift stage trimmed in gold fabric. A podium stood center stage beneath a banner that read, Community Honors Night, Celebrating Service and Hope. Ellie sat in the third row, hands folded neatly over her clutch, a simple gray coat draped around her shoulders. Her lipstick was red, soft, classic, the shade she used to wear when Miles was young, and she still believed looking put together could keep out. Family together. When they called her name, there was no standing ovation. Just a quiet swell of applause, warm but respectful, the kind that rises for someone the town already feels it knows. Lydia walked to the podium first. She adjusted the microphone, her hands steady but her throat visibly tight. When I was a little girl, my mother used to tell me that warmth was something you made, not something you waited for. She glanced at Ellie, then smiled faintly. I didn't understand her then. I do now. A pause, a slow inhale. She lit more than candles. She lit futures. She built rooms people could rest in, people who didn't owe her anything except the chance to begin again. The crowd stirred, soft murmurs blending with a few quiet sniffles. Lydia looked down at her mother, eyes bright, and said simply, Please welcome Eleanor Sloane Whitaker. Ellie rose, slow but certain, and took the short walk to the stage. The applause felt like wind, gentle, unforced. When Lydia stepped back, Ellie reached for her hand, squeezing it once before turning to the microphone. Her voice was low but clear. You all know what it's like to be told you're lucky just to have a seat at the table. I stopped calling that gratitude the day I realized it was just permission dressed as kindness. She looked toward the front row, where the shelter's director and Pastor Clay sat side by side. I didn't start this to be thanked, she continued. I started because silence only helps the ones who already have everything, the rest of us. We build from what's left. She paused. The lights glinted faintly off her gray hair, the red of her lipstick catching the glow like a mark of defiance. Legacy isn't what you keep, she said softly. It's what you stop letting be taken. The audience went still. No coughing, no murmurs, just breath. Pastor Clay stood after her, hands clasped before him. Her silence spoke for the forgotten, he said. And her work reminds us that grace isn't polite. It's fierce, it's costly, and it's how the cold ends. He bowed his head. Amen. The crowd echoed it, quiet, uneven, but real. At the very back of the hall, Dana stood against the wall, half shadowed by the doorway. Her coat was too thin, her phone off. She didn't clap, she didn't cry, she just watched. Her mother had told her not to come, but she couldn't stay away. When Ellie stepped down from the stage, the two locked eyes for a moment, long enough for something wordless to pass between them. Not forgiveness, not warmth, just recognition. Dana lowered her gaze first. Outside, the evening air was cold, but not cruel. Ellie and Lydia walked together toward the parking lot, the award plaque tucked under Ellie's arm. It wasn't heavy. Nothing was anymore. Do you want to celebrate? Lydia asked, trying for lightness. Ellie smiled faintly. I already did. How? Ellie stopped beside the old lamppost near the curb. Its bulb flickered once, then steadied. By surviving long enough to be called what I always was. Lydia's eyes filled, but Ellie only reached out, touched her hand once, and turned toward her car. Behind them, the town hall lights glowed through frosted glass, catching the brass plaque that would hang by morning. Eleanor Sloane Whitaker, for building warmth from silence. Inside, the chairs were already being folded, the microphones unplugged. Outside, Ellie's breath drifted in the winter air, thin, visible, free. Lydia stood in the grant office lobby with her phone clutched in both hands. the approval email glowing against the screen. Subject: Community Innovation Grant, full award notification amount, $68,000 over 12 months. Project name: the Sloan Spark Fund. She didn't cry, not here. She walked out into the cold, her boots crunching on salted pavement, and exhaled into her scarf. The sun was low, pale gold through the trees, and for the first time in months, she felt something she almost didn't recognize: readiness. That night, she sat across from Ellie at the kitchen table, a printed copy of the grant agreement between them. Ellie read it once, then again. "You're the listed recipient," Ellie said finally. "I applied in my name, like you told me to." "You didn't have to call it that." Ellie's eyes flicked to the heading: Sloan Spark Fund, Empowering Women Beyond Shelter. "I did." Lydia pushed the paper forward. "You carried the weight. I just want to keep it moving." Ellie shook her head, but there was no bitterness in it. "Take full credit." "I don't want credit," Lydia said softly. "I want direction." Yvette, who'd come by to help with logistics, leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching the exchange like a quiet witness. "She started something," Yvette said, nodding toward Ellie. "But you're the one who's going to finish it louder, bigger, stronger." Ellie didn't protest. She just reached for the pen, initialed where Lydia had marked a sticky note, and passed it back. Across town, Dana sat hunched over her laptop, editing her new website banner for the third time. Her rebrand, Healing Through Advocacy from Silence to Service, had drawn 2 likes, both from burner accounts she forgot to unlink from an old giveaway. The podcast she'd pitched hadn't returned her email. Her old sponsors had gone silent. The few comments she got now always echoed the same refrain: redemption isn't rebranding. You can't steal your way into a cause. She closed the laptop. Even bitterness was tired of her voice. On a Wednesday afternoon, Gavin knocked on Lydia's office door. He stood in the frame, hands in his hoodie pockets, hair longer than Ellie remembered, eyes steadier. "Got a second?" Lydia glanced up from her laptop. "For you?" "Always." He stepped inside slowly. "So, I've been thinking about college, not just finishing, but what to study, what kind of impact I want to make." "You don't have to figure it out yet," she said gently. "I know, but I've been watching you, what you're building, and..." He took a breath. "I want to intern here, with you, the fund, the shelter, all of it." Lydia blinked. "Seriously?" "I'm not my mom," he said, with the kind of conviction Ellie once feared she'd never hear. "But I want to be the kind of person she pretended to be." She stood, pulled him into a tight hug, and whispered, "We've got a lot of work to do." Later that week, Ellie and Lydia stood in the back office of the shelter, folding donation receipts and prepping envelopes. Outside, kids chased one another between the marigolds. A new mother asked where to hang her chore chart. "You're building something real," Ellie said, smoothing the corner of an envelope. Lydia didn't look up. "You started it," Ellie smiled, small and knowing. "I just stopped them from taking it. That's not the same thing." She slid the last envelope into the pile, then turned toward the window. Gavin was outside with 2 teens from the new family group, showing them how to map out the community garden beds. Ellie nodded toward him. "Let the rest fade." Lydia glanced out too, her eyes warm. "And us?" Ellie's answer was simple. "You two build the rest." The moment passed without punctuation. No music, no dramatic turns. Just the quiet click of a filing cabinet, and a breeze lifting the edge of a hand-drawn blueprint taped to the wall. It read, "Community Kitchen Expansion, Phase 2. In the bottom corner, scrawled in Gavin's handwriting, "Inspired by Sloan." Ellie lit the last stub of the lavender candle just after sunrise. Not for ritual, not for meaning, just for scent. It barely held a flame now, melted low in the glass jar, the label wrinkled from steam and time. The wick curled like a question mark as it caught. The scent was softer than she remembered. Not cloying anymore, not weaponized in mockery, just faint lavender and a trace of beeswax. Clean. Ordinary. She set it on the windowsill of the cottage, the lake just beginning to shimmer beyond the frost-lined glass. Birds stirred in the trees, her tea steeped in the kitchen behind her. The cottage was nearly empty now. Ellie had donated most of what she owned to the shelter, clothes, extra linens. Even the oak bookcase she'd once sanded with Miles in the garage, back when he still brought her tools instead of invoices. Now, the rooms held only what she loved. A small table, her mother's teacups, a blanket Lydia had knit during the first week she stayed. She moved easily between the kitchen and front room, folding a loaf of honey oat bread into a basket lined with gingham. No noise, no chaos, just warmth. By late morning, Tilda pulled up the gravel drive in her rust-colored Volvo and knocked once, then let herself in. "Place smells like absolution," she muttered, unzipping her coat. "What is that?" "Honey bread, and the last of the candle," Ellie said, pointing toward the window. Tilda leaned over, sniffed. "You finally outbaked the bitterness." Ellie smiled. They sat on the porch with mugs in hand. The lake stretching wide in front of them, slow and silver. "You still writing that cookbook?" Tilda asked. Ellie shook her head. "Not mine to write anymore." "Legacy doesn't have to be on paper," Tilda said. "Sometimes it's in the scent of a place." Ellie sipped her tea. "Sometimes it's in what you leave out." Tilda nodded, her eyes scanning the tree line. "You leaving or settling?" Ellie looked out at the lake, the gentle breath of wind carrying the scent of pine and something sweeter. "I'm staying, but I'm done standing guard." That afternoon, Lydia arrived in overalls and a bandana tied around her hair. Her car was filled with paint cans and brushes, a stepladder strapped in the back seat. "You're really doing it," Ellie said, greeting her at the door. "I promised," Lydia replied. "I said I'd bring the mural here once it was finished." The wall on the side of the cottage had been cleared and sanded. Lydia taped off the trim and began with light pencil outlines. Sunlight, open hands, stitched thread running through abstract shapes. By mid-evening, a single phrase curved across the top. "Legacy isn't inherited. It's baked into walls." Ellie stepped back, eyes stinging not from paint fumes, but memory. "You wrote that," Lydia smiled. "You lived it." Just before sunset, Gavin arrived on foot, a small mason jar in his hands. "I thought you might want this," he said, handing it over. "It's the first batch from the hives we added near the garden beds." The honey was golden, viscous, flecked with light. "I remember when you were afraid of bees," Ellie said, amused. "I still am," he said, smiling. "But sometimes you do it scared." She took the jar with both hands, as though it weighed more than it looked. "You're not your mother, Gavin." "I know," he said softly, "but I'm still hers. That's why I'm trying harder." Ellie didn't reply. She just stepped forward and wrapped him in a long, steady hug. The sun dipped lower behind the pines. Inside the window, the candle flickered once more, lavender fading into dusk. Ellie walked past the shelter on a breezy Thursday morning. The sidewalk still carried the faint scent of fresh paint and early blooms from the raised beds. 2 children raced barefoot across the lawn, one in mismatched socks, the other clutching a red plastic dinosaur. Both laughing like laughter itself was the shelter. She paused just long enough to smile, then kept walking. No one waved, no one needed to. This was not her place anymore, not because she had been pushed out, but because she had chosen her exit. The farmhouse was long gone from her name, her mind, her memory. The title transferred, the stories rewritten. Even the walls had changed shape. What had once been a battleground now held beanbags and bunk beds. She didn't miss it. Down at City Hall, the permit list tacked on the lobby bulletin board bore a new name in bold black ink. Project Sloan Center for Resource Equity. Primary contact, Lydia Whitaker. Ellie hadn't asked what it was. She didn't need to. The blueprints were Lydia's now, and the steel in her hands wasn't borrowed. Someone had once told Ellie that women like her faded quietly, that the best she could do was not make waves on her way out. They'd never seen her daughters rise. The bus pulled out of town that evening, just as the sky turned dusty orange. Ellie boarded with a canvas bag, a mystery novel, and no itinerary. No one was sick. Nothing was broken. She wasn't running. She was leaving for a week, maybe 2, because she wanted to. She watched the trees blur past the window as the town shrank behind her, the lake flashing gold once, then vanishing. She smiled. Freedom didn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it showed up as a ticket you didn't ask permission to buy. Pastor Clay visited the shelter that Sunday. He walked the halls slowly, ran a finger along the windowsill, and peeked inside the newly stocked pantry. When he met Lydia in the dining room, she handed him a tea towel and a dish to dry. "She's gone for a while," Lydia said, setting another plate on the rack. "First time since I can remember she didn't ask if someone needed her before going." Clay chuckled softly. "Some people pass down silver," he said, drying the plate with care. "She passed down steel." Lydia glanced toward the playroom, where Gavin was helping a child build a block tower. The sounds of joy were real here now, messy, echoing, unfiltered. "She still warms the rooms, Grandma," Lydia said, almost to herself. Ellie sent no postcards, no updates. When she returned, it was with a small leather notebook tucked into her purse, filled with phrases overheard in diners, recipes jotted down from women with tattooed wrists and gravel voices, and a photograph taken by a stranger at the edge of a state park trail. Her face turned slightly away from the lens, but smiling unmistakably. She slid the notebook onto the shelf beside her mother's teacups. Then, quietly, she reached for the jar on the windowsill. The lavender candle was burned down to waxed glass and memory. No wick left to light. Ellie didn't throw it away. She cleaned it out, set it on the table, and filled it with water and wildflowers. Later that evening, she sat on the porch as the sun dropped behind the trees. The mural Lydia had painted glowed gold in the low light. Gavin had added bees near the marigolds. The cottage was quiet, not empty, just content. She thought about her birthday, the one no one remembered until the last moment. The cake from the freezer section, the candle, already nicked, already half burned. She hadn't lit it for comfort. She'd lit it for war. Ellie looked out at the lake, fingers wrapped gently around her tea. And then, softly, to the air, to the quiet, to no one in particular, she said, "At my birthday, they gifted me a candle and said, 'For when you're lonely.' I lit it while signing the papers that burned their comfort away.